958. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. I'm going to begin with, what is the Grail Message? The Grail Message, in the Light of Truth, by Uprushing, is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life, for through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail Message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover through the intuitive perception if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail Message, Uprushing. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail Message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole without leaving any gaps. Again and again in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail Message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to give you one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, just to remind you, the topic for tonight is Love Your Enemies. And I think you, pretty much all of you would know where this quote is coming from. It is from Jesus in the Bible. And I would like to read that the quote or where it's coming from a bit more in a moment. But as usual, Gregory, I like to look at the meaning of the words in the topic. So, as I said, the topic is Love Your Enemies. And the first word there is love. So, Gregory, I looked that up in the dictionary, and it's given me 2 meanings. The first one, it's for love, this is an intense feeling of deep affection. And the example they give in the dictionary is babies fill parents with feelings of love. So let me repeat that, an intense feeling of deep affection. Gregory, is that, would good for our discussion for tonight?
That is only a manifestation or a part manifestation of what love is.
Okay,
So
that's good.
that does not suffice to be used completely.
Right, thank you for that. So you're saying it's a part manifestation of love, and the meaning there, which is saying intense feeling of deep affection. So what I'll do then, I'll continue with the second meaning, and then you can say about what that, how good that is. So that is saying a great interest and pleasure in something. So example they give, his love for football. So is that another angle, would you say, Gregory, for the meaning of love?
The second one is almost the same thing as the first one, because there's that deep affection attached to it. So, again, these are only part manifestations, but has really nothing as such to do with what love is, or the real love is.
Okay, so let me ask you then, Gregory, about what is real love?
Well, each person, or once that expression, love, is used, there is the sense, the sensing of some type of attraction. And that attraction, the source of it, which has to do with caring the welfare of the other in such a way that it results to watchfulness. For he who cares must be watchful, just as you will watch over a baby, or you will watch over that which is dear to you, to ensure that which you yourself are caring about does not come to harm, be it a human personality or even an animal. That is that deep attraction that one senses, which has now provided, or which is evident by the watchfulness over the loved one, or by the caring over the loved one. For he who does not watch does not care, and he or she who does not care, strictly speaking, does not love.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for this explanation and meaning you're giving for the word love there. It's definitely, I would say, deeper than what the dictionary is giving. So let me just repeat that from what you just said there. It's love is real love, is a source of attraction, caring for the welfare of another, and then being watchful to someone that's dear to you. It can be human, it can be an animal, and I think you also said you can sense it. So, yes, do you want to say something else, Gregory?
No, I'm listening to you, but I have to be silent when you are talking.
Sure. Thank you. So, yes, so I hope this gives a good picture now of the word love. Talk about care, welfare, and being watchful. So, okay. Now, the full title is Love Your Enemies. And so, I don't think we need to look that word up. We know that. So, the next word is enemies. And there I found this in the dictionary. A person who is actively opposed or hostile to someone or something. An example they give, the traditional enemies of his tribe. So let me ask you about that, Gregory. Let me repeat that. The meaning, there are three meanings actually, but this is the first one. It says, a person who is actively opposed or hostile to someone or something. That is an enemy. What do you say on that one, Gregory? The meaning of that?
One may just put forward a counter-example. Opposition does not necessarily mean enmity. It is the volition behind the opposition that manifests real enmity. So an opposition doesn't mean that there's enmity. One can take the case of where people are playing football and it has an opposing team. That doesn't mean they are enemies.
Yes, very good point there, Gregory. Definitely, two football teams. I know somebody may be a fan of one and therefore oppose the other one, but it doesn't mean you have to hate them or you have to consider them enemy, as you said. But what about the word hostile then, Gregory? Hostile. So let me remove so that a person who is actively hostile to someone or something. That sounds like an enemy.
In discussing it, one mentioned the volition behind what one sees gross materially, or the manifestation may look like hostility, but again, that does not necessarily translate to enmity. For when there is violent hostilities, then one may even dare to say there's enmity. Hostilities in wars, in strong debates, where people have strong stands, and they express their strong standing in their words, that does not mean there is enmity. For people may be looking at the different parts of the same issue, and because they are examining different parts of this same picture, they express themselves, which may run counter to the way other people see it. If, however, they then they then attach hostility or violent hostilities, then the tendency becomes that there is enmity, in the sense that they may want to eliminate the other personality because he has a different view.
Thanks again, Gregory, for your answer there. I'm going to just, let's say, clarify that, what you said. So an enemy, Gregory, would be really someone, not just someone necessarily disagreeing with you, but actually becoming so hostile, you can say, that they want to kill you. I'm going to just say it directly like this. That would be the real enemy. Is that right?
One would say violence being attached to it. The extreme case is killing. There is a tendency of injury in one's body, or injury in the way comments are made, which are deeply hurtful without examining the facts. So again, all this is the volition behind what one perceives with his five senses. It is the nature of that volition that enables one to say if the other is an enemy or not.
Thank you for that, Gregory. In fact, there's a meaning in the dictionary for enemy, one of the other meaning. It says a thing that harms or weakens something else. And so that sounds more, let's say, aligned with what you have just said about having a hostility with violent or violent volition, you can say. So that sounds, you could call it, I was going to say evil.
That comes nearest to it.
Thank you for that. Okay. What I will do now is I'm going to go to, as I said, this quote that I've said is love your enemies is coming from Jesus, and it's that's coming from, the reference I have is Luke chapter 6 verses 27 to 36. So I'm going to read that now, and it's titled Love for Enemies. But to you, this is Jesus speaking, but to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks you. And if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies. Do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be the children of the Most High. Because he is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. So that was, I was reading from Luke chapter 6, verse 27 to 36, with Jesus talking about love for, I'm going to say, your enemies. Gregory, I must say, when you read it, it's especially the first time you read this, it sounds very difficult to understand and accept that you'll want to, in quotes, help your enemy, or allow your enemy, I should say, to, I'm going to use the word abuse you, or mistreat you, let me say mistreat you. And then you give them love in terms of, so they do good back, let's say they're harming you, but you're doing good back to them. It sounds so strange. So let me ask Gregory, what is the purpose of that? To do, somebody who's trying to harm you, normally you would say, do something back to them, but not in a good way. So why is this saying, do good to them, even though trying to harm you?
Well, at the beginning of this discussion, of this question and answers, there is the presentation of what true love is, which manifests in care for for the loved one, which manifests also in watchfulness, in alertness. And if indeed one really loves the other, it also means that that person that loves the other must be alert, must be watchful. So it presents a state of perpetual watchfulness. It is not one-sided. And a very simple example that each person may use is the case where a personality is advised or takes general advice on what to do in order to come out victorious or that which should be beneficial to it. However, he or she disregards the advice which he or she is given. The question then becomes, does that person love himself or herself? Of course, the person may say, oh, I love myself. That means even in the disregarding the piece of advice or the intuition which he or she was presented with, but which intuition has been ignored, and subsequently that personality falls into disrepute. Does that person love himself or herself? These are the questions which each person must ask themselves. But of course they love themselves. That means they were their own enemies, yet they love themselves. How did they go about loving themselves when they are their worst enemies? So the picture must be seen in the right way. That which many call enmity only helps to keep others awake, to keep others watchful, to keep others caring. In that particular state, where there is watchfulness or there is perpetual watchfulness, therein lies the love which Christ has mentioned. For once one comes to realize that there are laws in creation, which laws are well ingrained in the perpetual motion in creation, and these laws now manifest in that which one refers to, or generally refers to, as that of reciprocal activity. And also you have that of the attraction of homogeneity. These two laws are based in motion, in perpetual motion, such that the so-called enmity, if it is a person that has exhibited it, one strives to ensure that when the reciprocal activity, which has been sown through enmity, when that reciprocal activity has matured to return to its origin, if the person who was harmed has already severed that connection through good deeds, through good intuitions towards the person that has initiated that hatred, that enmity, the reciprocal activity will be dimmed. For there are no feeders of hateful energies into the reciprocal activity. For in doing that, that shows perpetual watchfulness, that also shows caring. And love lies in caring. Therefore, when it is said to love one's neighbor, it means show that caring in perpetual watchfulness to help one's neighbor who may not be as mature as yourself to come to a realization here or hereafter, now or much later. At the same time, there are scenarios where one may have to take very severe action to ensure that such perpetration that has arisen from the enemy, so-called enemy, does not continue to arise. In making that strenuous effort, because one cares, that in itself is an activity in love.
Thank you so much, Gregory, for your very, you could say, detailed answer and, explanation in the, what you're putting forward there. Of course, I want to go into it deep more, but before I do that, I just want to let the listeners know that you're listening to Bless Radio, and this is a spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Uprushin. And if you wish to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, then you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight on the radio show is Love Your Enemies. And you're welcome to join us with any questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. And we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1.com. You can also listen to us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number 1 there, space, live stream. That's Bless Radio 1, the number 1, space, live stream. That's for the live show. You can also listen to the recording of this show also on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number 1 again, space, Grail Message, space, the topic of the show tonight, which is Love Your Enemies. And of course, you can listen to our previous shows as well, also on YouTube. Thirdly, we're broadcasting on Zeno. That's ZENO.FM/Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1 again. Now, Gregory, there's so much that you have said, and in this topic of love your enemies, because as we started at the beginning, we were defining what is love. Then we were talking about love, defining enemies, and then as we were looking at it, we realized, there's so much in the word love. Caring, being watchful. And then you think of enemy, somebody, if you think too casually, you would say, just anybody who's, let's say, coming in your way against you. But do you know in what real way that you could say coming against you? Is it, let's say, evil behind it? Or is it just a disagreement? Somebody who disagrees with you doesn't mean necessarily they are being evil against you. Just somehow they have a different understanding, and so it doesn't mean they're trying to harm you. But you might say, no, they're my enemy. And then even let's say the real enemy, when we were talking about hostility, which could be violent and harmful, then it's still a person, isn't it, who's being harmful to you. And you can see that, even if they're wrong or being misled somehow, there still is a chance, you could say, for them to redeem or to show mercy to them, because you also are capable of the same thing, what they are doing. So you could say, do you have to become, in quotes, vengeful or attack them like they are doing to you? No, you don't have to. You can also show love and care, even if they're not your loved one. So, if you see it, they are a fellow human being. And we can love our fellow human being. Actually, Gregory, it reminds me again, we mentioned so many times in our program, all for one and one for all. Treating everybody like a fellow brother or sister. Did you want to say something there, Gregory?
When enmity is also mentioned, or enemies, there is the aspect which is non-personal, say the other person. A simple example is the case where one is slothful. That means one is so very slow in their activities. There is also greed. There is also envy. These are enemies. However, in knowing about greed, in knowing about envy, one then strives in such a way that one is perpetually active, perpetually observant, perpetually on the alert to ensure one does not fall into that category. So that becomes helpful in keeping the human personality awake. Because you have the scenario in which the human personality may be considering that the other person is an enmity, whereas not considering that he himself or herself, due to its inner attitude, he or she has become its own worst enemy worst enemy because of the lack of wakefulness. So to being awake is the best one can have against all this. Being awake is the solution or the antidote. So that's which one may refer to being an enemy. For one can have an enemy as a personality which is not oneself, and one can have an enemy within oneself. And to counter that, there is the perpetual wakefulness.
Thank you very much, Gregory, for your, I won't say answer, but your point, because you're saying don't look at, not on the enemy may not be just the other, someone else, but it could be you yourself acting against yourself, and this you may be aware or you may not be aware of that. So, and so your key sort of help for that is being watchful. So watchful doesn't mean just watching somebody in front of you or behind you, but watching it yourself as well. So you could say this is really looking at all different angles of the meaning of the word enemy and how to handle this enemy, which can be within you. So thank you for emphasizing that and make us reflect on that. I mean, when I was reading the from Luke chapter 6, verses 27 to 36, about Jesus talking about the enemy, I would say it was referring more to other people, but also it was to do with attitude, as you were mentioning there, Gregory, our attitude. So, there's so much there really to reflect on. Now, there was a point, Gregory, let me just read that, what I was reading.
You're on mute.
Thank you, Gregory. I didn't even know I was on mute. Thank you so much for that. I've even forgotten my thread. So I was just sort of saying, Gregory, thank you for what you've said there, that the enemy can be us, within us. So when you say be watchful, it's not watching out necessarily somebody in front of us, a person in front of us that can be acting as an enemy, but also watching ourselves, because we, out of our attitude, out of our slothfulness, as you mentioned, could be acting with the wrong attitude, and and turning ourselves against ourselves in how we go about our activities. So thank you for bringing that out. I'm just thinking, we've chosen the title for topic tonight is Love Your Enemies. And when I was reading from Luke chapter 6, verses 27 to 36, where Jesus is talking about love for enemies, he was referring to others who are, you could say, acting against us, and then how we should treat those people. But I definitely got your point about looking at ourselves as well.
May I come in?
Okay, go ahead, yes.
Luke only interpreted what he himself has heard from others or from Jesus. Jesus himself would not, his expressions will not be of such as to be very narrow as how Luke himself has presented it. For he was fully aware of whom the enemy is, and his attitude to the Romans showed this very clearly. So he called for watchfulness on the Jews at that time, but more so on internal watchfulness. However, those who listened to him found it easier in their state of maturity to see the enemy on the other side, whereas the enemy within was ignored. The enemy within, which is the cause of all evils.
Thank you, Gregory, for bringing that up again. So, as you say, Jesus would have said something, and then it's possible when Luke was hearing that, he took it in only in one aspect of it, not the, let's say, the wider aspect of it. So he missed a part of, what was meant by it. So yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you for that. Now, there was this point of being merciful. I just want to go and take that on now. So let me read this. I'm going to read like a second half of that, what I just read about Jesus from Luke. So this is Luke again, chapter 6, but this time I'm going to read from verses 32 to 36, and it's Jesus speaking. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies, do good to them, and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, because He is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. So Gregory, I'm wondering there, I know you've mentioned already that we can't just say the enemy is somebody outside of us, but just specifically on what Jesus is saying in this part here, is, for me it looks like it's somebody else when he's talking of other people. So, but what my question on this point, Gregory, is Jesus saying, give to others without expecting anything back, and without expecting any reward. That would be great. And also be kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. So, which is be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Well, I think, Gregory, well, let me ask you, what is Jesus pointing to in this statement?
Jesus himself is fully aware that there are streams of power in creation, in nature, and whoever receives of this stream of power needs to make use of these streams of power to enrich himself internally in some form of virtues, and then pass it on. For these streams of power sort of enlighten the personality. That means that person is enlightened as if light is shining out of that personality. The enemy is the one who, in their activities, lack these streams of power, or do not know how to use these streams of power which has also reached them. So they turn it into turbulence to create confusion. On the one hand, there is those who know how to use these streams of power in their virtues of compassion, in their virtues of grace, of modesty and courage, of humility, of vigilance and alertness. Whereas the so-called enemy, the other personality, lacks this. And as we know, light can only shine from a high point to a low point. Therefore, the need to reach to the other personality who lacks, because he or she has not sufficiently cultivated these virtues to enable him or her to become alert enough. So that person who has need to show understanding, need to show compassion. That is what is referred to. For showing compassion, or to someone who has compassion, it is good, but it is not sufficient. One needs to show compassion towards those who do not yet know what compassion is. One needs to show courage who do not know what courage is. One needs to show selflessness to those who do not know what selflessness is. And the enemy has always been that who, in one form or the other, lack the virtues which are being enumerated. It doesn't mean most of the time that one has to talk about money. And because things, even at that time, were tied to money and goods, and whereas kindness, support for one another, was not even considered. So the way and manner in which the human personality respond to challenges coming for those who may be considered enemies, the way and manner in which people respond tells so much. For the streams of power keep coming, whether people have done wrong or not done wrong. That stream of power that streams from the Almighty is a blessing. And he or she who receives of this blessing need to make use of it to enable him or her to build up these virtues and subsequently to exhibit these virtues towards others, not only those who also have built up these virtues, but also to those who have not yet built these virtues.
Thank you very much, Gregory, for your answer, and and basically the picture you're painting about, let's say, how wide-ranging is this, understanding of, as you mentioned, the streams of power of God, how they work. Yes, you can limit it by thinking, lending money and then getting repaid, and in a material way you can think of it, but then you can also go deeper into the spiritual way of kindness, which doesn't have to involve money, and material things, just showing the care, it's you could say quite a mature way of using our abilities, and that those who are not so, you could say, not familiar but not really aware of that depth of kindness, when you become an example of the kindness, the other people who are lacking that, let's say, can appreciate it or see it. Whether they appreciate it is another point, but at least they will see something. So that can move them, inspire them to become, to see this kindness in a higher level. So, yeah, thank you for that. I'm going to just remind listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's a Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message by Abdrushi. And if you do want to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, then you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, message, message.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is love your enemies. You can join in the discussion with any questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. And we are broadcasting on Bless Radio 1, that's the number 1.com. You can also listen to us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, the number 1 again, space live stream. That's for the live show. And you can listen to the recording of this show on YouTube, and the next day just go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1, again the number 1 there, space Grail Message, space topic of the show, which tonight is love your enemies. And of course you can also listen to our previous shows also on YouTube. Thirdly, we're broadcasting on Zeno. That's ZENO.FM/Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1 again. Now, Gregory, we're talking about love, and then also there's justice. And sometimes when you're talking about, you can say, doing good to the people who are harming you, and then in your mind you also wonder, okay, there's a good point there. You want to show them, there is kindness there. But then there's also, you're wondering about the justice. I know you can't do two things which are like, how can I say, inconsistent or opposing each other. So either what I'm trying to say is, you could say, I'm forgiving you and I'm showing you good things. How to be good, you can say, through kindness. And then then you're wondering, what about the justice? should they not have to pay for what they have done wrong? And so I was trying to understand that, Gregory. Is it more, I'm just trying to see how would the justice, you could say, work in this situation? Does it mean when you sort of show kindness, Gregory, that the person doesn't need to repay for what they have done? I just want to understand that. If somebody's harming you and you are showing kindness, you're not taking something against them now, you're trying to show them in a good way. What happens for the, you could say, redemption of their injustice or harm that they have done?
First things first, it's good to start from home. Home is where the heart is. When you consider the scenario you yourself just painted, that scenario refers to the other person. Consider the scenario of the person himself, how he or she has considered in his activities love, or in his or her activities justice. There are three different categories. The first category, which is perceptible to our five senses, are the effects, are what one sees gross materially using their five senses. That means you have heard, you have seen, you have smelled, and there is again, these are all attached to the body. And we see manifestations of the effect of one person has done on another. Also, the manifestations can also be considered of that which one has done on himself, on his physical body. So that category which is lowest is that which is gross material. There is the other category which has to do with our thoughts. The way we ourselves have used our thoughts. What it has been able to attract to us as blessings, and what it has been able to attract to us as curses. That is another category. The last category is that of one's intuition. One's intuition, which is that of intuitive perception. Its activity, the way it's been able to attract to us the streams of power which are true creation, true nature. How we have been able to make use of these streams of power in our intuition, or how in our neglect and our indolence we were unable to perceive rightly these streams of power through our intuitions in order to make use of them. So when you consider these three categories, each category also must swing within the laws of creation. The laws of creation, particularly that which is that of reciprocal activity, that which a human personality has shown gross materially, or in thoughts, or in one's intuition, in accordance with these laws of motion, of which there is reciprocal activity. reciprocal activity which is still in the attraction of homogeneity, these things are bound to come back such that the personality either experiences it in deeds or in thoughts or in his intuitions. The returns is an act of justice for that which one has sown, that precisely in abundance must he or she reap. That in itself is justice. If, however, in the course of time, that personality has so improved himself such that the intuitions now are nobler, his thoughts are nobler, his deeds are nobler, what then happens? That tendency, that longing for nobility will also permeate his immediate environment, such that when the threads that he himself has woven in the past and they have grown, when they are bound to come, they will meet an environment which does not resonate as strongly as in the past. In that case, these returns may only have minimal impact on him in deeds, in him in his thoughts, or in him in his intuition. Again, that is an act of justice. So when justice is considered, there are two basic principles one must consider: that there is reciprocal activity which is steeped in motion. There's always motion. And there is that the law of attraction of homogeneity. For if the activities were not homogeneous, they would not come back to you. They will have veered off. So the human personality has that innate ability to be or not to be. Not using the innate ability granted it brings him or her reciprocal activities, which in itself is justice. Using the innate ability, which is steeped in free will, to bring him benefits in his caring, in his alertness, not only caring for himself, but also caring for others, like has been discussed, one for all and all for one. That in itself is also justice, which justice sort of elevates him or her in the longing for others, in the longing for better streams, which streams now come through him because he himself cares for others. That is how creation is. That is how nature is.
Thank you very much again, Gregory, for your detailed explanation and picture of, how you could say human beings are operating on three different levels, which is our physical deeds, our thoughts, and our intuition and the laws of nature or creation are operating in all these three levels. So, you might say some words, but you may not mean them, or you claim to do something, but you don't put the full effort in implementing that. Then you get your just reward according to, what you put in, you get out in whatever level it is: words, deeds, thoughts, and intuition. So normally, I guess we are not seeing an event or activity on all these levels. We may be in a superficial way just looking at the outer physical level and not what is behind it, what's underneath it. The volition, like you mentioned before, what is it? The person may be acting in a particular way in front of you, but what actually underneath is their motive, or I think you said volition before, behind it. So this we may not detect necessarily when we are assessing something, and but yet the laws of nature and creation are taking all that into account in bringing about the result, cause and effect, and so on. So that's what we don't see, you can say, in our sort of normal way of seeing things. But actually, that's what's going on underneath it, these things. So yes, thank you very much for not only bringing it to our attention, but also showing that, how these laws are operating on all these levels. Now, I was thinking, Gregory, for example, the 10 Commandments, like thou shalt not steal and thou shalt not kill, and I'm trying to form a question on that actually. I was going to say that if, it's sort of following on from what you're saying, that if somebody is breaking these commandments, one of the 10 Commandments of God given to us through Moses, are we meant to assess, you can say, if you are to, show kindness, like I know it says love your enemies, but in this case we're just saying fellow human being. I want to take it that way. So when, let's say, the judge wants to make a sentence or judgment on a particular case of a human being committing a crime, let's say stealing or killing, and I guess you want to show love, but with justice. I say but love and justice is probably what I should be saying. How can they, Gregory, make the right judgment when they can't see the person's thoughts? Because at three levels you said there's the physical deed, there's the thoughts, and then there's the intuition. You yourself as the person, if you are perpetrating these things, you know what you are doing. Your thoughts, you know what they are. You know the deed you're doing, which probably other people can see the deed as well. And then your volition, you know what is your volition. But when the judge is making a judgment, they were not even there, with that crime is happening. And they just look at the facts that they're presented by the, police or whoever is presenting it, and they base it on that, which is probably mostly physical facts. How can a judge make a right judgment about which considers the thoughts behind the act and the intuition behind the act? Can he do that, or he has to leave it to the natural laws to give the real justice?
First, a minor correction. When a crime is investigated, from records, the investigators or the superintendent also considers the motive behind this crime. These are also presented to the judge. These are taken into consideration as far as they themselves are able to perceive, as far as they themselves are able to establish the motives behind the gross material happening in deeds. There are some whose intuition is sharper, and they may dare to go take a step further to also include that in their reports. So, to some extent, the thoughts are taken into consideration because the evidence is looked into, not only the gross material deeds which have been well established, but the thoughts behind it, what lies behind it. These are also considered in the courts. However, it is injustice, justice which is earthly based. The limitation is based on what has been provided by those who gathered the facts of the deeds and also of the motive. This is what is looked into, and that to a large extent is how far they can go. Beyond that, the judge himself or herself must have true experience, examine the facts, examine the motive, allow his intuition or her intuition to examine these facts, to examine also the motives before, in accordance with the laws of the land, make a decision. There are many instances where these things are in different nations. As long as these nations allow others to present these motives or these facts. There are some who are religious based and therefore will not listen to this and take these things very literally. So the judge is not just left on his or her own. The facts and the motives are presented. He himself or herself, who is now the judge, needs more time to reflect into the depth of the cases, the depth of the scenario, to clarify within himself or herself before pronouncing judgment in accordance with the laws which has been put down by the nation. The more mature a nation is, the more virtuous their laws are. But that is really the case nowadays. So there are cases of terrible miscarriages of justice, which was never any justice anyway.
Thank you very much, Gregory, for this answer. Yes, there's always a motive when somebody is doing something. So, and I was sort of neglecting that, and people do assess that. So there's clues there. You can, as you said, about how a person has acted, and then you can come to some conclusion from that. So yeah, thank you for this your answer there. Now, so the topic is love your enemies, and I was thinking that okay, I'll look at it in a different. Okay, yeah, let's look at that. Let's say there's a war going on, and people are being injured, and injured, and then let's say in the world some people are supporting one side, another people are, or individual even, are supporting the other side, you can say. So side A and side B, and both sides are suffering with injuries, and I'm thinking, when somebody gets injured, it just as if for a human, you'd say, whether you support them or not, you should be wanting them to, for the best for that person and recovery, So I'm just trying to consider that this empathy is what I'm trying to say, a fellow empathy. But I'm wondering, Gregory, that some people, because of which side somebody is, they may not show that empathy, or some reason they may not feel empathy, and even hatred. They might even feel hatred. And just before I go there, Gregory, I want to just look at that word hatred in the dictionary, and it says feel intense dislike for. Hate, yeah. So feel intense dislike for. So this, and I'm trying to think in my head, Gregory, there shouldn't really be hatred, because earlier on you were talking about hostility. And when you look deeply, the hostility, you think somebody is trying to harm you, that means they're being hostile, they're being violent to you, that's your enemy. But but then there's the love also, Gregory. So it's like I'm trying to get a look at this picture where there looks like there is a love for in one way, and then there's hatred in another way, but we are told to love our enemy. So even if somebody is harming you, you still want to show love to them, and give them how can I say, a way to recognize as a fellow human being. That's what I can say. So now my question then, Gregory, is it all this level of, you could say, hatred or love, is it all about our maturity as a human being, that we can appreciate something, the situation is somebody's having that empathy, somebody's injured, and some people, as I said, turn, we don't care, they're the enemy, they can say things like that. Is that to do with maturity, Gregory, of the human beings, how they react or respond in this situation?
The response of a human personality in all things is dependent on his or her maturity, definitely. And the scenarios you yourself painted, one must clarify the deeds of a personality and that personality himself. The hatred is directed at the deeds and most of the time not the personality. If, however, there is the perpetration of such deeds continuously, then it then devolves on those who are victims or on other people to strive in such a way as to make it impossible for the aggressor to inflict so much pain or harm on others. So you have the scenario where the victim must defend themselves or their neighborhood, because they wish to experience and to mature just like the aggressor wishes to experience and mature. That which they will not inflict on the aggressor, in justice and love, they should not allow the aggressor to inflict on themselves. Therein lies the balance. In wakefulness, in watchfulness, in alertness lies that which the personalities need, even in the so-called war.
Thank you so much for that answer there, Gregory. There's something more I want to ask about it, but I'll do this just after. Just want to that you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday evening spiritual discussion program from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail Message, by Abdrusheen. And if you wish to know more about the Grail Message or want to get a copy of the Grail Message for yourself, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that. www.grail, Grail, message, message.com. And the topic we're discussing tonight is love your enemies. You're welcome to join us with any questions or comments by contacting us on our UK number, which is 079 39 641 958. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 39 641 958. Again, you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And you're listening, we're broadcasting on Bless Radio 1. That's the number 1.com. You can also listen to us on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1. That's again the number 1 space live stream. That's for the live show. You can also listen to us, you can listen to the recording of this show also on YouTube. Go to youtube.com and type in the search box Bless Radio 1. That's again the number 1 space Grail Message space the topic of the show, which tonight is love your enemies. So the recording of today's show, you'd be able to listen to it tomorrow. You can also listen to our previous shows also on YouTube. Thirdly, we are broadcasting on Zeno. That is ZENO.FM/Bless Radio 1. That's the number one again. Now, Gregory, we're talking about maturity of people in how they respond and react, in terms of empathy with another fellow human being who may be on the opposing side, let's say in a war, who gets injured, and how they respond. And I was thinking that when people reflect on that, because that person is just, if you think it in a very simple way, yes, one happens to be this side, one happens to that side, they're both in a way doing the same thing. One is fighting, A is fighting B, and B is fighting A. You can say one may be the good side, and one may be the, let's not say evil, the bad side, for whatever way that somebody might assess that. But then, who is the one to decide that? That it is, we are just saying that two people are fighting, but we need to show empathy even to the opponent, that you're just, even if you disagree with them. So, and I'm reflecting, Gregory, obviously fighting isn't, let's say, the best way to resolve the issue. It's like should be the last resort, as they say, when these things happen, because you can't come to any agreement, and you think that's okay, now it's about fighting, this is the only way we can make it this final outcome of it. So, just trying to think on that actually. Gregory, even if somebody wins in a war, does it mean they are right? Because they can win this time, and the second time, there could be a war later, and the other side can win. So, I'm trying to think there. How should, the ideal is not to have a war, isn't it? So, when a war happens and somebody wins, how should, we should look at this? Is it, oh yes, you have won, that means the other side must have been wrong? Is it how you can look at it this way? Or how can we look at it, get justice in the right ways, Gregory, in this matter?
First and foremost, one must look at what has happened, what is happening currently, and live in the present to prepare for the future. It is very wrong to say in war there is not the aggressor. For just as one strives to put his or her house in order, it is also agreeable that each nation, each person deserves the same. If, however, one then assails or brings harm into the domain of another, into the homestead of another, in all naturalness, that personality that has been violated in that which he or she is striving to build, that personality needs to defend himself. Needs to defend himself by the means available to it. So it would be wrong to assume that having come to one's own home to destroy it in such a way that that person, in order to prevent war, should not fight back. In fact, it is the sacred duty of the order to fight so ferociously as to preserve its dignity as a human personality, just like the others. It has to be, we wish to live in accordance with our laws without offending others, without being aggressive in others, without hostilities with others. So others must learn to do the same, even if they consider they have the resources to precipitate a war of aggression, of hostilities and destructions and death. So that discussion of one for all and all for one, that only holds for those who have the same goal. You cannot have the same goal with another who wishes to bring harm or destroy you. Just as you show respect to the others, that gives the evidence that you not only respect, you wish them to thrive in their present condition. You didn't say because you yourself have the resources to destroy the other person, you went ahead. It is that imbalance where one considers that they have the resources to destroy another that has precipitated all this. Even the laws which are made, it is most of the time based on this imbalance. It is quite remarkable that you find that even in war, when one side has been defeated, the other side, which in quotes was victorious, unless they themselves show maturity, then you find the war is not over. The so-called victorious side must show maturity and respect for human dignity, allowing the human personalities to mature, allowing the human personalities to develop themselves in such a way that they are peaceful, not only to themselves, but also to others. Unless that scenario is considered, then there will always be war, because one will try to have a negative and destroying impact on another. Such behavior has arisen out of, could be fear that the other group of people before long will show such maturity in the way they live that the aggressor will be seen for what he or she is. So there is the case also of inferiority complex, a complex which now exhibits itself in the way many an aggressor seeks to express themselves. The expression of bullying, the expression of theft, the expression of that which is not virtuous at all, the expression of greed like you find in most places, the expression of gluttony or of lust, and to some extent of envy. These are the precursors, which precursors must have been built up that precedes the aggression, the hostility, the destruction, which one has now seen as war. The question has always been, could an aim not be achieved in another way instead of the destruction of personalities? Personalities who, like them, are striving to mature. So, whatever is said, the war as it is at present, that seeks to destroy another who, like himself or herself, is striving to mature. Such a war of aggression, of death and hostility, only arises, only is precipitated by those who live in fear, by those who have a complex, by those who are unable to express themselves and are not flexible enough to find ways of settling grievances, but plunge a whole nation into war.
Thank you so much for this answer there, Gregory. I know, let's say, I saw an example of how people react, after a war. So the example I was given was this World War I, where, let's say, Germany eventually lost that war, and it was made to pay reparations by the victors, you can say allies, and it only made them more bitter, the Germans more bitter, and so bitter that then they started another world war, which they lost again. But this time, the victors, the allies, decided they want to help to rebuild Germany. And in the end, those Germans, they took away their army or they took away their fighting power, but the main thing what happened, they rebuilt this country, Germany, and that Germany became an ally of the people that they were fighting in the past. So that was quite an amazing, you could say, result from two different ways of acting of the victors, So you can see when you show love, the way you show love to your enemy, it can result in a quite opposite effect of what you are thinking is supposed, you're the victor, you can do what you want. But then if you harm the victor, the loser more, it can only, hit you back again. But then if you work with it, you could say loser of that war, then actually things can turn a different way, which are more positive and helping. So this was quite amazing thing that was shared with me. I must say, it's really a beautiful example, you can call it, of all for one and one for all, even if we are enemy at one point. Did you want to say something about that, Gregory, at all?
Well, you've explained it beautifully, and that holds.
Thank you. I'm now just thinking, we're almost to the end of the show. What I wanted thinking was, we said enemy, many times we think, another person is the enemy. But we also have discovered today that actually we can be our own enemy through being slothful, through being lack of being alert, and you know. But I would say that we are mostly blind for that, about that. That we are, let's say, causing our trouble to ourselves. Um, how are we meant to recognize that, Gregory, that we can be doing things which are, we could say, causing our own destruction or, you know, um, problems for us?
There is the alertness, the watchfulness, the caring in physical activities, in deeds. There is also the watchfulness in thoughts and the watchfulness in one's intuition. These are the three categories. For it has been said, he or she who does not watch does not care. For only that you care for, that you watch. Because if you have a garden and you watch the garden, you take care of the garden, then it turns out to be a lovely garden because you care. The same happens to your physical body. The same happens to your thoughts. The same happens to your intuitions. That means he or she who wishes for changes must first change himself or herself for that which is good, for that which is noble. Only in that will there be meaningful change. Else, those changes are only discussed, but never implemented in oneself. One cannot be talking about one's health, that one is growing bigger and bigger, when one eats and eats as if there is no tomorrow. One cannot be talking about one's health when there is no watchfulness in the neighborhood to ensure that that which may cause harm or may bring harm to the physical body is not eliminated even at an earlier stage. One cannot talk about wellness if one's thoughts are always engaged in those things which are negative, which does not allow the human personality to thrive. For those thoughts are attracted, those thoughts which help to make the environment around the person, the personal environment, is influenced by the thoughts around that person, such that even when noble thoughts float around, they are unable to make contact because that person has far too much been involved in all these sort of thoughts which are divisive, which are not noble, which are filled with gossip. So he or she who wishes for that which is good must first strive to be good by paying attention to his thoughts, by paying attention to his deeds, such that the returns will be of similar nature, and he or she will also attract that which is noble. Then he or she need fear no more.
Thank you very much, Gregory, for this picture. In the end, what is clear is our fate is in our hands, and we are responsible, of our direction that we are going. So unless we are, like you say, awake, alert, watchful, and we care for ourselves, we cannot be, how can I say, look at others. So thank you very much for that. Dear listeners, we've come to the end of our show tonight about love your enemies. Hope you have enjoyed the discussion. And I'd like to now read from the foreword of the Grail Message, which is entitled, For Your Guidance. The bandage falls, and belief becomes conviction. Liberation and redemption lie only in conviction. I'm addressing earnest seekers only. They must be able and willing to examine this matter objectively. Religious fanatics and irresponsible enthusiasts may hold aloof, for they are detrimental to the truth. As for the malevolent and prejudiced, they shall find their sentence in the very words. The message will strike only those who still carry within them the spark of truth and the yearning to be true human beings. To all such it will become the shining light and staff. It will lead them unswervingly out of all the chaos of the present day confusion. The following word does not bring in new religion, but is intended as the torch to help all serious listeners or readers find the right path, which leads them to the longed-for height. Only he who bestirs himself can advance spiritually. The fool who uses extraneous aids for this, in the form of ready-made opinions of others, only walks his path as if on crutches, while ignoring his own healthy limbs. But the moment he boldly uses all the abilities which lie dormant within him, awaiting his call to help in his ascent, he is employing the talent entrusted to him in accordance with his Creator's will, and will easily overcome all obstacles that seek to divert him. Therefore awake. Genuine faith lies only in conviction, and conviction comes solely through an inflexible weighing and examining. See that you are truly alive in the wonderful creation of your God. Abdrushin. Dear listeners, if you want to get a copy of the Grail Message or want to get more information on the Grail Message, you can go to this website, which is www.grailmessage.com. I'll spell that, www.grail, message, message.com. And thank you for being with us tonight. We'll be back as usual next Tuesday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. with another topic. I just want to ask Gregory, is there anything you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye?
Wishing the listeners a very beautiful week.
Thank you. Same from me, listeners. Have a great week. God bless.